Two kids were gunned down in broad daylight outside a Chicago school, and just 40 minutes later, a young rapper appeared on Instagram, smiling like he wanted the world to know it was him. Was it just drill music, or a deadly confession? And while police stayed silent, the streets started whispering. Was Lil Jeff working with the feds? This is not just another gang war. It's a story of betrayal, blood, and a truth that's finally starting to surface. Two kids lost their lives at a school in Chicago, and for a while, no one had a clue who was behind it. But then, just 40 minutes later, the internet lit up. Lil Jeff showed up on Instagram and YouTube, casually claiming responsibility. It was wild. Trench News had been warning people, and now it seemed they were right. Lil Jeff was openly confessing to murders online. His name kept surfacing in connection to shootings, robberies, and all kinds of street violence. And yet, no matter what, he kept slipping through the cracks, never charged, never locked up. Now, the streets are buzzing with whispers that Lil Jeff might have been working with the feds all along. And in a shocking twist, a police officer has stepped up to confirm what many suspected. Let's just say the truth about Lil Jeff is finally starting to surface. Lil Jeff might not have been the person everyone believed he was. Let me break it down. Known in the streets as Bloodhound, Lil Jeff. His real name was Jeffrey Lamar Harris Jr. Born on July 14, 2002. By the time he was in his late teens, Jeff had already carved out a name for himself in Chicago's drill scene, a world where music and survival are tightly woven. But his rise came to a tragic end on June 8, 2024, when he was gunned down at just 21 years old. For many, his death felt inevitable. His street presence and the raw energy in his lyrics made him a marked figure. See, Chicago drill is not just music, it is a raw, unfiltered reflection of life in the trenches. These are not just bars, they are warnings, confessions, and war cries. Lil Jeff lived that life, and in the end, that life caught up to him. In the world Lil Jeff moved through, your lyrics had to line up with your actions, and from all accounts, his did. No exaggeration. Word on the street is, Jeff allegedly claimed he was behind the deaths of 11 rivals. The body count rumors were so wild that folks on Hood Reddit started calling him Jeroy, like he was the next King Von in the making. In hip-hop, reputation has always been currency. When you speak on something, people expect it to be grounded in truth, especially in the streets. This pressure to live out your lyrics seems to fall heaviest on rappers. But beyond the headlines, the stats, and the street chatter, who was Lil Jeff, really? Strip away the image, the street mythology, and what remains is a young man shaped by his environment, walking a path that too many before him have taken. Lil Jeff grew up on 79th Street and Maryland Avenue, right in the heart of Chicago's East Side, an area known to be Black Disciples territory, but he represented something different: the Bloodhound Gang, also known as Bloodhound 079, a set that took control of that neighborhood and was formed in 2015 out of two other groups, Braindead and Drill City 079, though he eventually became deeply involved in gang life. Those closest to him say Jeff originally had dreams of becoming a basketball player. His childhood friend J.B. Bin Laden often recalled how Jeff was always slick and sharp, even as a kid, standing out at whatever he chose to focus on, whether it was chasing hoops or, later, navigating the streets. Yeah, I actually knew Lil Jeff. His older brother is one of my closest friends, someone I have known since we were kids. I remember Jeff from way back, like when he was 6 or 7. Even then, he had that wild streak. He was the type of kid who stayed getting into trouble. Sneaky, clever, always up to something. But whatever mischief he got into, he always seemed to be good at it. Word around the neighborhood is that once his basketball dreams fell through, he dove headfirst into the streets. By the time he was 18, he was locked in with the Bloodhound crew and quickly made a name for himself as someone who did not just talk, he moved with purpose. That kind of presence, it does not go unnoticed. In the trenches, that kind of energy will get you noticed fast, and for Lil Jeff, it meant he was rising through the gang ranks quicker than most. But what really set him apart from other neighborhood figures was the way he handled social media. While most guys in the streets keep their moves quiet, Jeff took a different route: loud, bold, and unapologetic. He was all over Instagram and Twitter, flexing heavy and, at times, practically telling on himself. He would post cryptic captions that anyone in the streets could decode, often alluding to specific hits he was rumored to be behind. Even during interviews, like the one with DJ UTV, Jeff kept things vague but laced his words with subtle clues. hinting at the life he was really living without fully exposing himself. Jeff knew how to keep people talking. He never gave too much away, but he played into the mystique just enough to keep his name buzzing. When asked where he was from, his answer was smooth and low-key: Chicago, east side of Chicago. That calm demeanor masked a much darker reality. The true turning point in Jeff's street legacy came after the murder of his close friend, Z-Money. According to those familiar with the politics, that killing shattered a decade-long truce between the Bloodhound crew and their longtime rivals, Trap City. What followed was nothing short of a street war. Retaliation, after Retaliation, was no longer just a name in the mix. He became a key player in a brutal cycle of getbacks that would ultimately shape the final chapter of his life. The violence quickly spiraled out of control, so intense that even a city as battle-tested as Chicago seemed caught off guard. Tensions between Bloodhound and rival crews like BKN, Trap City 800, and a Trey mob were boiling over, with Lil Jeff allegedly playing a major role in escalating the heat. One of the most talked-about incidents tied to his name was the killing of a Trap City member named Lyle in June 2023. Reports say Lyle was sitting in a car on the 1300 block of West Taylor in Little Italy when Bloodhound members allegedly rolled up and opened fire. He was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. He was pronounced dead on arrival. The streets were on fire, and the chaos that followed had people running red lights and blowing through stop signs, just trying to survive the storm. As we sped through the city, trying to escape the chaos, I had to slam the brakes at one intersection. A car was coming fast from the other direction. I looked over at him and said, "I'm taking you to the hospital." He nodded and quietly replied, "Okay." No arrests were ever made in connection to the shooting, but not long after, Jeff was back on social media, dropping vague posts that many believed were subtle nods to the incident. This became his signature move, allegedly putting in work on the streets, then hitting the internet with cryptic flexes that fueled his reputation without ever naming names. It helped cement his image in the trenches, but also made him a marked man. Still, all of that buzz would soon be overshadowed by what many considered the most controversial body tied to his name. One of the most disturbing killings, linked to Lil Jeff, was the double homicide that took place on January 26, 2024, a tragedy that shook the city to its core. The victims were two high school students, 17-year-old Montario Monty Williams and 16-year-old Robert Lil Rob Boston, both allegedly affiliated with BKN. The shooting happened beneath a CTA elevated train platform near Wabash Avenue, in the heart of the Loop. According to authorities, the teen students at Innovations High School were gunned down in broad daylight, sending a wave of panic through the midday crowd. Witnesses described the terrifying scene, saying gunfire erupted just before 12:30 p.m., locking down the area as police sealed off entrances and exits. They said nobody in, nobody out, one bystander recalled. The fear in the streets was immediate and raw, as what should have been a normal school day turned into a deadly ambush that left the entire city shaken. That afternoon, just as classes let out, 6 students were leaving Innovations High School when 2 dark-colored vehicles, car and an SUV, rolled up. What followed was a brazen daylight attack that sent shockwaves across the entire city. It was not just the timing or the location that rattled people, but the fact that the victims were teenagers, regular kids. According to eyewitness accounts, masked gunmen jumped out and opened fire on the group, striking Monty and Lil Rob in the chest and killing them on the spot. Despite no official charges ever being brought against Lil Jeff, many began to speculate. His cryptic posts and suggestive lyrics had online sleuths piecing things together, convinced that Jeff was involved, even without the police naming him directly. The boldness of the hit, the youth of the victims, and Jeff's online presence kept the streets and the internet buzzing with suspicion. Things got even wilder when Jeff dropped a track after the double homicide, where he allegedly rapped about turning Za into Za, a chilling reference, according to many, to Monty, who was also known by that nickname. His rap career, though short-lived, was powered by the weight of his street presence. Songs like Can't Beat Us and his mixtape Stepping in Blood gained traction fast, not just because of the production, but because listeners believed Jeff was not fabricating anything. He was rapping what he lived. As his buzz grew both in the streets and in the booth, Jeff started catching the attention of big names in the industry. One of his most notable connections came through a major cosign from a heavy hitter in the drill scene, signaling that his influence was no longer just local, it was crossing over into mainstream visibility. Drill pioneer Lil Che reportedly took a personal interest in Lil Jeff, reaching out directly and taking him under his wing. Their bond extended beyond just music. Che saw potential in Jeff and wanted to guide him through the industry's highs and pitfalls. When asked about their collaboration, Jeff shared that it all started when Lil Che reached out, and from that point on, their connection solidified. One of the standout moments in Jeff's rising career was landing a feature from Lil TJ, a major name in the game. Jeff explained that Che was more than just a mentor, he genuinely looked out for him, offering advice on how the industry works, what dangers to avoid, and what signs to watch for. It was clear Che wanted Jeff to succeed, not just as an artist, but as someone who could navigate the game with wisdom and survival. Lil Jeff saw Lil Che not just as a collaborator, but as a big brother figure, someone who genuinely cared about his growth. Despite gaining traction in music and locking in with industry names like Lil TJ, Jeff refused to leave the trenches behind. Unlike other rising rappers who distance themselves from the streets once they get money, Jeff stayed grounded in Chicago, even as his visibility and the danger around him grew. When asked about moving, he admitted he wanted to one day, but not yet. He had too much going on, and the war he was involved in was not something he felt he could just walk away from. This decision baffled many, but to Jeff, the streets were home, and unfinished business kept him there. Chicago rapper FBG Young explained it best: young men like Jeff often do not fully grasp the weight of staying tied to that lifestyle, especially without a solid foundation or proper guidance. The toll of that life showed in Jeff's behavior. In one raw moment during a DJU interview, Jeff was caught on camera snorting a perk, clearly using drugs to numb the pressure and trauma he carried. Even as DJU and other OGs tried to steer him in a different direction, Jeff spoke honestly about the cycle he was trapped in, almost as if he had already made peace with his outcome. Sadly, his words proved prophetic. Behind the scenes, federal agents were reportedly watching closely. As Jeff's street legend and rap profile grew, so did his presence on law enforcement radars. According to several sources, including a YouTube video titled "Feds was investigating Bloodhound Lil Jeff for drug trafficking and murders," the FBI had been quietly building a case against him since January 28, 2025, months before his death in June 2024. Based on his lyrics, social media activity, and rumored involvement in violent crimes, it is no surprise he was under surveillance. Jeff made no effort to hide his street life. He embraced it openly, never showing any signs of cooperating with authorities. His bold online presence, constant association with known gang members, and refusal to relocate only fueled speculation. If he was being watched, he did nothing to conceal it. Jeff's story became a topic of fascination and debate both in life and after his death. His gritty lyrics, unapologetic demeanor, and real-life connections to violence made him a polarizing figure. And while claims about federal investigations swirled, they followed a familiar pattern seen with other Chicago drill artists like Lil Durk. Multi-layered cases involving surveillance. All three had just dropped a track together called "Long Live Jeffrey Dahmer." Within months, all three artists were gone. These back-to-back killings rattled those in Jeff's circle. Bloodhound member Q50, who had worked with Jeff and reportedly moved alongside him in the streets, gave a raw interview afterward. He described Jeff as his big brother and confessed that after Scoom's death, he was so broken his crew had to remove him from the chaos just so he could regain his focus. The emotional toll of these repeated losses went beyond personal grief. It exposed the deeper damage caused by generational cycles of violence. It showed how one death leads to another, and how pain rarely ends with a single casket. Online, Jeff's legacy sparked intense debates. On platforms like Reddit, users both celebrated and criticized his lifestyle. Entire threads, some labeled Jeffology, attempted to break down his alleged body count, lyrics, and social posts to build a full picture of who he was. His story is not just about one young man. It reflects a broader crisis in Chicago, where gang-related violence has claimed over 4,000 lives in the past 2 decades. In some years, gang ties were linked to more than 60% of all homicides. What made Jeff's tale especially gripping was how deeply his music and real-life choices intertwined. In an interview, OG rapper Tay Savage warned against the growing trend of self-snitching, young rappers airing real crimes in lyrics and online in hopes of catching a label's eye. To him, the danger outweighed the clout. FBG Buddha echoed this, saying Jeff had enough star power to lead his crew out of that life, but no one around him made him slow down. He was the bag. He was the breadwinner. They should have told him to chill. Two people who knew him before the fame. Like J.B. bin Laden, Jeff's death felt like the loss of a little brother. He remembered Jeff as a clever, mischievous kid but great at everything he tried. "We got funny Lil Jeff stories," he said, recalling moments from childhood that now feel bittersweet. But the danger that ended Jeff's life still lingers. Months after his murder, JB and his team barely escaped a shooting at a recording studio in ambush caught on camera during a documentary taping, injuring 4. Jeff's story lives in his music, in the trauma left behind, and in the tough questions his life raises. It is a cautionary tale about what happens when talent and trauma collide in communities where opportunity is scarce and loyalty can cost you everything. Whether his legacy becomes a warning or an inspiration for the wrong reasons depends on how we choose to understand and tell his story.